I heard they mad, I deserve to brag. I'm in my bottom line Birkin bag, and I ain't trying to waste a whole lot of time with this rhyme. But after this, we getting straight to the bottom line.
All right, welcome back to another episode of The Expensive Truth. I am Bottom Line Burke. This is episode 4. I have the great privilege and pleasure to interview a Boston College alum like myself, and his name's Ed Murphy. He's the CEO and president of Empower Retirements, and we're looking forward to talking about a little bit of sports, a little bit of finance, and just life in general. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, welcome Ed Murphy. Ed Murphy, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Jamal. Great to see you.
Great seeing you too. So I have to start off with the obvious, the picture in the back, Murphy #1 with the New England Patriots. Tell us a little bit about that story, about how that jersey came about.
Well, I was competing with Tom Brady for the starting quarterback job. Oh, hardly.
I think you lost.
Yeah, exactly. Well, first of all, Jamal, it's great to be here. I got a lot of respect for you. Followed you very closely with your career at BC. You were a hell of a player. But seriously, in terms of the Patriots, it really just goes back to being a fan, for a number of years. And, Empower's had a relationship with the Patriots for the last 6 or 7 years. Mm-hmm. And that's one we've really valued quite a bit. We also have a pretty substantial relationship with the Denver Broncos, too. So that's my loyalty sort of split between the two, but I'm probably a little bit more partisan to Denver, given the investment that we made there.
Yeah, so let's get right into it. That was something that really caught my attention. Can you talk a little bit about the partnership that you have with the NFL, National Football League's Denver Broncos? Can you talk a little bit about the details about that partnership, and how does a partnership like that materialize?
Yeah, so good question. So it started back, several years ago. We just had a general sponsorship with the Broncos, where we had a suite. So for hospitality, we could entertain clients and prospects and associates, and then and we had some signage in the stadium. So we had I'd say a modest relationship with them. And then we started to see real value coming from it, and for a while, the Broncos were marketing the naming rights because they went through a number of different naming rights sponsors. The last one was Sports Authority, which ultimately went bankrupt. And so, we started to take a serious look at it and evaluate it. And in the end, we thought that it made a lot of sense for us as we start to build more of a consumer brand, which is what we're doing. And, we employ not 9,000 employees, 4,000 are in the Denver community. Wow. So we're, I think, a good corporate citizen. Our associates are very active in the community. And the stadium is really sort of co-owned by the Broncos and the Metropolitan Stadium Authority. So the taxpayers, in effect, funded the stadium when it was built over 20 years ago. And so we thought it would be both a good investment for the community, knowing that they needed to raise money to maintain the stadium and to keep it state of the art, so to speak. But also, as we look to expand our brand and our awareness in the marketplace, we just thought it would be a smart investment, and it's turned out to be a great investment. We're entering year 3, and really, really pleased with the way it's worked out.
No, outstanding. So, year 3. So, how long in totality is the contract?
It's a 20-year deal with some standard provisions in terms of the ability for us to get out of the agreement at some point if we felt it was necessary. So we have some flexibility, but we're committed for the long run. It's a great organization, and Joe Ellis, the president, has been terrific to work with, and his team. And if you just look at the branding and the number of impressions that we got, even in a year like 2020, where there were no fans in the stadium, and we were going through, obviously we've been going through the pandemic. I think we were ranked 5th in terms of stadium naming partners, in terms of the value and the exposure that we got. So it's a rabid fan base. 76,000 fans, and it gets a lot of TV appearances, and so our signage is really well positioned in the stadium. And what we're trying to do is just raise unaided awareness about who Empower is. We serve 12 million Americans, over 70,000 corporate and government institutions, and we're helping people save for retirement, typically in workplace savings plans. And so it's important that people know who we are and know that we have a real passion for helping people save for retirement, so they're not in a situation where they outlive their income in retirement, right? That they can have a comfortable and a dignified retirement. So that's what my team is really focused on.
No question. I know during my time with Putnam Investment, another fellow BC guy, Brian Kelly, used to always say, you can't save for retirement, you got to invest for retirement. And,
that's right.
We hear a lot about titles, CEO, president, and some of it's ambiguous, especially if that's not something you're really exposed to in maybe a personal or even professional life, having access to somebody like yourself to kind of talk about what exactly those roles and responsibilities, entail. Can you talk about, what does that really mean when you are appointed CEO, president, of a company?
Well, I think from a practical standpoint, it's really about working with the folks on my team to chart a vision for the company in terms of how we're going to succeed for our employees, how we're going to succeed for the community, and how we're going to succeed for shareholders. And so, with that comes obviously a lot of responsibility. The market that we compete in is very competitive. And so what's going to make Empower different? How are we going to continue to grow and add value to our customers? And I see that as my chief responsibility, is to be that strategic architect that develops that defining strategy. And I don't do that on my own. Obviously, I do it with the help of others. No one has a corner in ideas, and I think leadership is about inclusion. It's about drawing people in. Obviously, you also have tremendous responsibility. I have 9,000 associates that are counting on me to do the right thing, to lead, to support them in their efforts. And so making sure that we're making thoughtful and financially prudent investment decisions, and that we're continuing to invest in our employees and technology and all those types of things, I think is really very much a part of the overall responsibility of a leader.
No, absolutely. And, it seems like when we was growing up, there was an abundance of pension plans. You get to work for a company and you work there 30, 40 years, and there's a set amount of money set aside for you. And today, the onus is more and more on the employee. Can you talk about the importance of the earlier the better of actually participating in your company's 401k plan?
Absolutely. Well, I think you make a really salient point, Jamal, because if you go back 15, 20 years ago, many of our parents who were working in companies, they were covered by defined benefit plans, which provided them with a set pension that was guaranteed, when they retired, provided they stayed to a certain age and they worked a certain number of years. And then over the last several years, the system has moved to more of a voluntary system where it's a defined contribution 401k, or if you work for a government employer, it's called a 457 plan. If you work for a hospital or an educational institution, it's called a 403b plan. But it's basically the onus is on you to save through workplace savings, right, through payroll deductions. And then typically the employer, not all the time, but typically the employer will provide some kind of a matching contribution. And so you certainly want to take full advantage of that and make sure you're contributing up to the match, so you're not leaving any free money on the table, so to speak. But it's interesting with four children, now ages 28 to 20, ever since they, once they graduated from college and they started to work, and I still have one in college, but I impressed upon them the importance of starting right away. Because typically the mindset for a 22-year-old when you get your first job out of college, or even if you don't graduate from college, but you get your first job, is, oh, I don't have the money to set aside to do that. And there's an old adage where you pay yourself first, and you can do it. You can do it even oftentimes on a relatively de minimis salary, even if it's $15 a week or $20 a week. It's think about if you're buying a coffee every day, right? I mean, that's $3 a day times 5 days a week or 7 days a week. That's $20 a week. That's $1,000 a year.
Right.
So imagine if you were able to forego that. So yeah, I think it's all about starting early. And the reason why it's about starting early is the compounded effect of that.
Correct.
So you can run the models, and someone who starts saving at 22 versus someone that starts saving at 32 has a huge advantage.
Can you talk? I hear that often. I understand when you say pay yourself first, when you get a paycheck, whether it's 10, 20, 30%, you tuck it away. Whether it's an investment or you just put it simply in your savings, or 529 plan, which is, like you're saying, if you have kids and you want to save for their college tuition.
Yep.
Can you elaborate just a little bit more about saving for your, pay yourself first, that concept?
Well, I think if you're working for a company that has a retirement plan, it's sort of easy, right? Because then you can set the minimum, savings rate or default rate, and there's a instrument called auto escalation where every year will go up 1% if you do nothing, right? Which is sort of nice. And you just sort of get accustomed to that because it's being taken out and you almost don't see it.
Correct.
So I think that's pretty straightforward. Now, if you work in a situation where workplace savings isn't available to you, so you don't have the benefit of payroll deduction, then to your point, it requires a little bit more discipline because you're going to get the paycheck. It's going to go into your bank account. And that's when you have to say, okay, I need to set aside that $50 or that $100 or whatever the amount is, right? And sometimes if you don't have a lot in the way of discretionary savings, I would err on the side of caution. In other words, you should have some reasonable amount of money set aside if you're going to begin to take risk, meaning put it in the stock market versus using a savings account. And I understand savings accounts at this point in time don't provide much in the way of interest.
Absolutely not.
And so I would have, particularly for a young person, I would have a bias towards the stock market, even if it's a simple index fund or something like that. But a lot of it has to do with understanding, is it long-term money? If it's money where you think you're going to need it in the next 2 years or 3 years because you're paying off student loans, because you want to put a down payment on a house, or you need money to come up with payments for an apartment, for example, or a car, then I think you want to be very, very cautious. But if you're able to say that there's a subset of my money, irrespective of the amount, but I'm not going to need it for 10 years or 15 years, and this is really my savings, then I think you can take a little bit more risk, and you can look at mutual funds, you can look at index funds, and if you have enough to work with an advisor, you can do that, obviously. So it really just depends on what you're trying to solve for.
No, absolutely. And what I find a lot of times behind closed doors is people are just, quite frankly, unaware of what their options really, entail. Just recently, I was talking to a single mother that works for a company, but very hesitant to participate in a 401k. And a question she posed was a simple one: was, what if I start to invest in a 401k with the employer I'm currently at and decide to, move to another job just because of the uncertainty of the job market currently? Can you talk about and provide a little light about how that process works if I decide to start investing in the 401k at company A and decide to go to company B and I want to take my money? Can you talk a little bit about how that process can work in a real practical manner?
Yeah, that's a really good point, Jamal, because today is so different than, as we were saying earlier, than our parents' generation, where people would start with a company and oftentimes stay there for their entire career.
Right.
Today,
Ed, just real quickly, I had 11 aunts and 3 uncles, and so they are from that time period. So
Yeah.
trust me, I had a lot of volatile conversations when I was going from job to job. So I just wanted to interject that.
Yeah. No, that's right. Well, so I think, if you look at someone that's entering the workforce today, the estimates are that they'll change jobs somewhere between 8 to 12 times in their career.
Right.
Change companies.
Correct.
So that's pretty significant as compared to past generations. And so, yeah, there are a couple options available to people. First and foremost, they need to participate, right? Like, I feel very, very strongly about that. Even if it's a de minimis amount, they need to be in these programs, because you can't rely solely on Social Security.
No.
Just like we were saying earlier, you can't rely on this corporate pension plan or a government pension plan, because they don't exist any longer. I mean, if you decide to become a police officer or a firefighter, years ago they were enrolled in the pension plans. The pension plans don't exist for new employees anymore. The pension plan is the 401k. It's defined contribution. You have to invest in that. So let's just say you do, to your point, there's an event in your life. It could be retirement, but let's just use the example you use. It's a job change. Typically, you would have as many as 3 options, maybe 4 options. One option would be, you could often leave it with the existing employer. So even though you're moving from company A to company B, you could leave it with company A. Most companies will allow you to do that. Right. The benefit of doing that might be that the products that are offered and the pricing of those products have been negotiated on your behalf. Right. So the investment fees that you're paying are probably lower than that they would be if you were
and a performance might be more superior than what you may roll into. Yeah,
that's right. So that's option one. The second option is, oftentimes the company you're moving to, company B, will allow you to roll money from your prior employer into your new plan. So that's an option. So you can consolidate, and it helps to simplify. The third option is, you may decide, look, I just want to roll it to an individual retirement account. It'll give me more flexibility, more options. I'm not constrained by what was in the plan, but I can do other things. Maybe I want to buy Google stock, and I can't buy Google in the.
Today's the Bitcoin.
Bitcoin. That's right. Yeah, I want to buy cryptocurrencies, right? So a lot of people do that. They'll roll to an IRA, and then there are some people who, I think, and we should talk about this, who oftentimes make a really bad decision, and that is, they decide to take a cash distribution. And when they do that, they're typically paying a 10% penalty, and then they have to pay ordinary taxes. So they have to pay ordinary income taxes on it. So, unless there's
just for clarity purpose, ordinary income taxes is whatever your tax bracket may be, correct?
That's correct. Yeah, it could be a federal and a state tax could apply. Now, I recognize sometimes there are hardship situations. We saw this last year with COVID, where people were, some people were being furloughed or laid off, and in order to cover their living expenses, they couldn't just rely on the stimulus checks. They needed to dip into their retirement accounts. And we did see that, by the way. We saw about 5% of our customers had to dip into their accounts.
And if my memory serves me correct, you guys made it a little bit more seamless, because you had some waivers.
We waived the fees. Yeah, we waived the fees, as did other providers. We weren't really unique in that regard. We obviously wanted to do the right thing and give people access at a time that obviously is very stressful in people's lives, right? And people were, clearly in need of utilizing those funds. But absent an environment like that, the preferred thing to do is to either keep it in the plan or to roll it to an IRA. And when you roll it to an IRA, it's not a taxable event. So you actually can take the money out of that plan, you can move it into an individual retirement account, and the government doesn't tax that. Right. So
is that a definition of kind of like a tax shelter?
Well, tax deferred, right? Because ultimately, when you go to take the money out, you will have a tax liability, and you'll owe the government money, but you might not take it out until you're 70 or until you retire, right? So it's technically tax deferred. So you get that compounding effect without any annual tax.
Yeah, compounded, interest and just performance can, exponentially accelerate
That's right.
performance and things like that.
That's exactly right.
And I know in today's climate, in most households, not all, it's still the males provide, is the breadwinner to, provide the finances and things like that. But what I find more often when I'm in the engaging in conversations with women, they are actually the ones making decisions, anything revolving money for kids, or the households. Can you talk about the importance of providing platforms like this one or others to help empower them to strengthen their wealth management skills?
Yeah, well, I think it's a really good point. I mean, if you just look at our, I'm not saying we're a proxy for the country, but if you look at our employee base, I mean, over 40% of our employees, close to 50% of our employees are women. Mm-hmm. I have 16 people that report to me. Half of them are women, 8 of them. So increasingly, they have lots of responsibility. Oftentimes, they are the breadwinner. And to your point, in many instances, statistics show they're the ones that are, in fact, making the financial decisions. So I think there's a broader discussion that needs to occur and a deep need for financial literacy across the country. And it's not specific to a gender per se. I mean, it should be starting in the schools. It should be starting in junior high and all the way through high school, so that individuals really can become independent in terms of understanding the importance of savings, the importance of being prudent in terms of managing their finances. So there's a lot that
credit, understanding how important your credit score is.
That's right. Yep. And the impact that debt can have. I mean, debt can be a good thing. We've all used it and leveraged it early in our career, right? We take out a mortgage to buy a home and that sort of thing. But you really have to understand how to manage that. And so I think there are lots of companies, we're one of them, where we're trying to do more in this regard and encouraging people to become more astute financially in terms of finances, and whether it's women or men, frankly.
Right, absolutely.
And so empowering people, no pun intended, given that's the name of our company, but empowering people with tools and information and content, and doing that at an early age, I think is really important.
From that stoop down in Lenox, my mama argued with me for like 200 minutes, drinking brews till I'm finished. To the news, them interviews, they knew my position. I could lie for free, but that truth is expensive. So visit my site, yo, get an insight. What my living was like was bigger than life. Different women spending the night, no children in sight. I got fed up, but kept my head up like I'm willing to bite. My life doing bike tricks, touchdowns for Mike Vick. Stop on a dime and split right soon as your eye twitch. I was quite quick, not many was like this. Waxing them like a candle, I guess I was quite lit. I heard they mad, I deserve to brag. I'm in my bottom line Birkin bag, and I ain't trying to waste a whole lot of time with this rhyme. But after this, we getting straight to the bottom line.